this good to go? Are y'all good? Good morning. It's a good crowd. On behalf of the U.S. Postal Service and the Alzheimer's Association Greater Kentucky Southern Indiana chapter, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Alzheimer's Semi-Postal Stamp Special Dedication Ceremony. My name is Joe Spencer, and I'm a 21-year career employee with the U.S. Postal Service. I'm proud to represent the over 500,000 working men and women of this great institution, whose roots stretch back to the 1775. Proud that we as a group can bring the power of our numbers, history, and heritage to bear in raising funds and awareness to help solve the puzzle that is Alzheimer's disease. Like many of us, I've been personally affected by the ravages of this disease. Nearly 8 years ago, my grandma Mary succumbed to the final stages of Alzheimer's and passed away. However, my family and I lost her long before that. We lost her in pieces, each piece blinking in and out until it finally disappeared altogether, forever. Every great challenge requires the input of many parts in order to find the ultimate solution. Neil Armstrong didn't land on the moon by himself. He had Buzz Aldrin with him and Michael Collins circling in orbit above them, in addition to thousands of people who worked relentlessly in making the dream of landing on the moon a reality. And like landing on the moon, finding a cure for Alzheimer's disease is and will be a team effort. And the Alzheimer's Semi-Postal Stamp is the U.S. Postal Service's way of joining this struggle. Every letter that bears this stamp is one more piece that helps fund the quest for a cure. Again, thank you for being here and for carrying forward a message of hope to finding a cure. Now those who are able, please stand as VFW Post 680 presents our colors. Now we'll have Postmaster Steve Hicks lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good morning, everyone. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Y'all may be seated now.
Now we're going to have Executive Director Deanna Esslinger come forward and say a few words. Deanna?
Thank you all very much for being here today. On behalf of the nearly 80,000 Kentuckians living with Alzheimer's disease and the 250,000 caregivers of those people in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, we're very grateful to have you here today. Mayor, Congressman, Alzheimer's Association board members, media, and the Postal Service. We wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you to the Postal Service. This is a great opportunity not only to raise funds for Alzheimer's research, but also to raise awareness of Alzheimer's disease. As I said earlier, 80,000 Kentuckians, but resonating on 250,000 caregivers. And those are people like me and like you, and I've heard a lot of your stories today, that have used your personal time, your resources, your vacation, to take care of those people. And we wanted to take this opportunity to raise more awareness for you as well. The Alzheimer's Association provides programs and services for families across the Commonwealth of Kentucky. We also support research, and it's my pleasure at this point to introduce Dr. Donna Wilcock. Donna is on our board of directors, but she also is at the University of Kentucky Sanders Brown doing excellent research for Alzheimer's disease. Donna?
Thank you, Deanna. I want to take this opportunity to thank the Alzheimer's Association for everything that they do every day, tirelessly, for families living with this disease. I also want to thank the post office. This is a great awareness campaign as well as a fundraising campaign. I have the stamps on my fridge. Everybody that gets mail from me sees the stamp. I want to thank Congressman Barr and Meg Ray for being here. I think your presence really highlights the importance of this disease and what we need to do to cure the disease. So with that, I want to think about what it's going to take to get a cure. We all want a cure. It's a team effort. And when I say a team effort, that doesn't just mean my team in my lab. That means a nationwide team. The Alzheimer's Association have been huge with respect to advocacy, pushing this disease, pushing the agenda nationally to really promote what we need to get a cure. And unfortunately, or fortunately, what we need is money. We have researchers, we have people poised to do the work. It's the money that we need to do that. And that leads me into my next thanks, and that really is to Congressman Barr. He has been one of our biggest fans, biggest voices in Congress, and with his help, we have gone from an NIH budget for Alzheimer's research of $400 million to this year, we're at $1.8 billion. Thank you. It's also the scientists. There's thousands of us across the country and around the world trying to make that big discovery, make a step. And one thing I'm always impressed with in our scientific field, compared to other fields where there's a lot of competition, is that you talk to anybody, they don't care who finds it. They really don't care who finds it. I hope that somebody, whether it's me, whether it's somebody else, we just hope that someone finds it. And that selflessness, I think, comes through in the research, and it comes through when we're at conferences. Everybody shares very openly what they're finding out on a daily basis. Our physicians who are taking care of these patients, they have a hard job. They have to tell the patients what their diagnosis is, and then they have to tell them that we don't have a cure. And then we have to try to engage them enough to help us find a cure, to help us study them, study their progression, involve them in clinical trials, and engage them without much hope, really, that there's going to be any help. And so the physicians do an amazing job. Sanders Brown Center on Aging is really proud to be a player in this team. It's been an NIH designated Alzheimer's disease center for 32 years now. It was one of the first 10 Alzheimer's centers in the nation that was funded, and we continue to grow. Thanks to the increase in the NIH budget, Sanders Brown has seen a 35% increase in their research funding over the past 4 years. That research is diverse. We have a lot of different projects, but in particular, some to highlight is we have a lot of projects that are looking to identify what people's disease really is. Alzheimer's disease, for those of you who haven't realized this already, and I don't think there's many of you in the room that don't know this, it's not one disease. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of, infection. Everybody has a different presentation. Everybody has slightly different changes happening in their brain. We need to be able to know what those changes are so that we can treat it. And this is called precision medicine. It's happening in cancer. It's going to happen in dementia. And Sanders Brown is very proud to be leading the charge on those discoveries. Sanders Brown has also been key in identifying these Alzheimer's mimics. So diseases that may look like Alzheimer's when you see a patient in the clinic, but they're really not Alzheimer's. They have different changes going on. And being able to understand that, again, with the eye to finding a treatment. We are one of the leading recruiters for clinical trials in the nation. We are currently, depending on which month of recruitment you look at, either first or second in the nation for bringing patients in, getting them into these nationwide multi-center clinical trials. And the reason we do that is not necessarily for our own purposes, But we know that the patients that are coming into the trial, if they're in the trial and that trial is successful, and we only need one, we need one successful trial, the patients that are in that trial are going to be the first ones to get the drug. And that's really important to us, that we get as many of our patients on those drugs as quickly as we can. We have a lot of translational research focusing on new therapies, new targets. If you're in the Alzheimer's field, you've probably heard amyloid talked about a million times. We have lots of drugs targeting amyloid. They're not working as well as we thought they would. We need new targets. So we have new targets that are in research right now in Sanders Brown. And one of the latest things that I think is really important for moving the field forward and continuing this push is that we were recently awarded what's called a T32 grant. This is a training grant that supports 8 trainees, 4 graduate students and 4 postdoctoral trainees. And the whole purpose of this is that we are training the next generation of researchers. We need someone to fill my shoes. I'm not going to be around forever. And trust me, the ideas that these guys come with, I wouldn't have dreamed of. They have the brightest ideas, they have the biggest imaginations, and I think that's what it's going to take to cure the disease. So getting the support for that next generation has been really important to us. So with that, I again want to really thank everybody for coming out for this event. Thank you to the post office for this wonderful stamp. It's a beautiful stamp. Our director gave us all a framed sheet of the stamps. That was our Christmas gift. Just the awareness that it brings about being on those envelopes is amazing. So thank you to the association, and I would like to hand over to Congressman Barr, who's going to offer his remarks. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Wilcock, and thanks to you and the amazing team of investigators and researchers at the Sanders Brown Center on Aging. We are so grateful to have you not just in the country, but in particular right here at the University of Kentucky in our backyard. How blessed we are to have you and Linda Van Eldik and the entire team of scientists and researchers at the University of Kentucky. We're very, very fortunate to have all of you all doing this very important groundbreaking research. And thanks to the United States Postal Service. Joe, thank you to the letter carriers and all of the team at the U.S. Postal Service for recognizing the tragedy of this disease, the human tragedy, and also the cost, the economic cost to our society as a result of Alzheimer's. And Deanna and Lisa and everyone at the Alzheimer's Association, thank you all so much for your advocacy and important work in this area. You know, we want to recognize the Alzheimer's Association for their work and dedicated efforts to fight this terrible disease. It impacts over 5.7 million Americans in 2018 and their families, the 250,000 of the caregivers. So it's not just the 80,000 Kentuckians who are stricken by this very devastating disease, but the hundreds of thousands of caregivers and the cost to the families. And this is an effort that is worth the investment. Dr. Wilcock talked about the increase in the investment that we're making, but it's certainly worth it when you consider that in 2018, Alzheimer's will cost the nation $277 billion. By 2050, their cost will rise as high as $1.1 trillion. 14 million Americans will be devastated by this disease in 2050 without a groundbreaking breakthrough in terms of the treatment or a cure for this disease. And as a member of the bipartisan Congressional Task Force on Alzheimer's Disease, we're thrilled that the U.S. Postal Service and the Alzheimer's Association are working together to issue this Alzheimer's semi-postal stamp that will generate critical funding for Alzheimer's research through the National Institutes of Health. And as Dr. Wilcock pointed out, Congress is making an important investment in the National Institutes of Health, especially when it comes to Alzheimer's research. Throughout my service in Congress, we've been a strong supporter of funding for Alzheimer's research, not just because of Sanders Brown right here in Lexington, but also because we recognize the impact and the return on investment that Alzheimer's research can have in terms of a treatment or ultimately a cure. The medical research can have a tremendous reach. It benefits researchers, manufacturers, medical suppliers, and patients in every state. But most importantly, we hope that this can deliver a cure for those families that are suffering from Alzheimer's. In 2016, Congress passed, with my strong support, the 21st Century Cures Act. And in addition to funding that precision medicine initiative that you talked about that attempts to harness the human gene in order to target therapies that actually will work in a very particularized way with certain individuals. The 21st Century Cures Act also authorizes $1.6 billion for the BRAIN initiative. And just a couple weeks ago, I voted in favor of the fiscal year 2018 Consolidated Appropriations Act, which increases funding to the NIH by $3 billion, including an additional $414 million for Alzheimer's research. And this marks the third consecutive year of historic increases for federal Alzheimer's research funding and brings us to a total of $1.8 billion. This is a small investment, frankly not enough of investment when you consider the trillions of dollars that we will be spending on an annual basis in just a few years because of the Alzheimer's disease. So coupled with the funds generated from the semi-postal stamp, we are offering researchers a real opportunity to perform pioneering research to develop new treatments, improve the quality of life, and ultimately cure diseases like Alzheimer's. And Dr. Wilcock is nice to recognize the efforts of Congress, but the thanks really goes to them and the researchers and to the Postal Service for offering the funding and to the taxpayers that are providing the additional investment here. So thank you to Sanders Brown Center on Aging. Thank you to the U.S. Postal Service. Thank you to Dr. Wilcock for all of your great work. Thank you to this collaborative effort to make Alzheimer's disease something that we won't have to contend with in the future. Our goal ultimately is to eradicate this disease, and we thank all of you. And we want to thank Mayor Gray for his participation in today's event, and I invite him to the podium for a few remarks as well.
Well, Andy, thank you, and thanks so much. Let's give him another hand of applause for the work that Congress has done. And Dr. Wilcock, everyone in town, of course, and beyond the borders of the city, appreciates so much what Sanders Brown has done, the leading edge work that you all are doing in Indiana. Thank you so much. My comments today, actually, where's Lisa Steele? Lisa, hold your hand up. I was talking to Lisa just a minute ago, and my comments today are more perhaps on a personal level. As mayor, of course, I experienced the opportunity and the blessing to see many people around our city and to share experiences. My experience was as a caregiver to my late mother, who passed away just about 3 years ago. She eased into Alzheimer's when she was 85. And she always had a wonderful sense of humor and a wit about her. My 5 brothers and sisters, as Lisa was sharing, your 6 brothers and sisters care for your mother even today. And we were caring, of course, with my mother for that 7 years before she passed away. One day, and I always had Thursday evenings and Saturdays with Mother, and we would often go to the bookstore on Saturday afternoon. We were coming back from the bookstore, out at Lexington Green, of course, and then we were going down New Circle Road. And just to illustrate that there are blessings and there are uplifting moments, as well as, of course, the distress and the anxiety that goes through these experiences. So we were driving back on New Circle, and we were headed west, and headed east were a lot of cars. And Mother looked over. We were from the small town of Glasgow in southern Kentucky, and she never forgot where she was from at all. She looked at this long line of cars going east, and she said, "Look at all those cars, Jimmy. They must all be headed to Glasgow, right back home." She never forgot where home was. I actually shared that Nick's story at her funeral service back home in Glasgow, and it got a lot of laughs. Now, the reason I share that is that, you know, as we often commiserate and we share the distress and the tragedy, yes, of this disease, that we're also reminded that in life there is distress and there are anxieties that we live through. Somehow or another, we make it through them. But because of the help, and often the help of the caregivers, and the extraordinary work you're doing at Sanders Brown today, there's hope. And with that hope, families are often uplifted in remarkable ways. This image that I got a peek preview of, and we all got a little bit of a peek preview of course, reminds us all of those who we may have, if we've been caregivers, we may have lost, and that's my experience. So thank you all for being here today, for having the opportunity to share in this, and Joe, for all that the post office has done. Thank you all so much.
Yeah, I do want to mention that it's not just letter carriers out there, it's everyone else. It's the clerks that are involved, the mail handlers, the janitors, everybody, the postal management. It's all of us coming together. And right now I'm going to introduce Jill Schaefer. She's the district retail manager for the Kentuckiana district from Louisville. All right, this is a variation on the original stamp from 2008. It's a mirror image version of that original stamp. Jill's going to make some comments about the nature of semi-postal stamps.
Yeah, this was, and those of you who don't know, in 2008 there was an Alzheimer's stamp that was that we unveiled, and it was actually the same image, but the elderly lady was facing the opposite direction than she is here. So in 2017, in November of 2017, we came out with the same stamp with her facing left. And then, I'm going to talk about a portion of what our proceeds go to for the semi-postal stamps. So I did want to share a little bit of that history there. The Semi-Postal Authorization Act grants the U.S. Postal Service discretionary authority to issue and sell semi-postal fundraising stamps to advance such causes as it considers to be in the national public interest and appropriate. Under the program, the Postal Service intends to issue 5 semi-postal fundraising stamps over a 10-year period, with each stamp to be sold for no more than 2 years. The Alzheimer's semi-postal stamp is the first and will be followed by a postal traumatic stress disorder PTSD semi-postal stamp to be issued in 2019. The next 3 discretionary semi-postal stamps have not yet been determined. The American-made Alzheimer's semi-postal stamp is sold at a price of 65 cents per first-class stamp. The price of a semi-postal stamp pays for the first-class single-piece postage rate in effect at the time of purchase, plus an amount to fund causes that have determined to be in the national public interest. By law, revenue from the sales, minus postage and the reasonable reimbursements of costs to the Postal Service, is to be transferred to a selected executive agency or agencies. Net proceeds from this stamp will be distributed to the National Institutes of Health, which is part of U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Since the on-sale date of November 30th, 2017, 1,802,930 Alzheimer's semi-postal stamps have been sold nationally, equating to $270,439.50 raised and donated to the selected agency. Many of us sitting in this room today at some point in our life or in our future will be or have been faced with the impact of Alzheimer's, and I feel honored to represent an organization that can recognize such a cause as this and others by assisting in funding research into Alzheimer's disease and expand awareness of the disease, which is now the leading cause of death in elderly American adults. Thanks to everyone for joining us here today. The Alzheimer's Association and the Lexington Post Office would like to invite everyone to refreshments after the ceremony. And while refreshments are being served, the stamps, we're going to have a table in the back that stamps, you can purchase the stamps today, as well as have your program that you have there. We'll put a stamp on it, and we have a special postmark designed for today's event that we will postmark that your program if you choose to do so. So you can do that in the back of the room there as well. So again, thanks to everyone for attending today, and thank you.